Hi, my name is Lucy, and this is another episode of Teen Pride Book Talk, the program on AADL TV, where each episode I take a little time to tell you about a young adult book that is both inclusive of and representative of folks in the LGBTQIA plus community. And today I am going to be talking about 4 books, all of which feature the trope of fake dating. So fake dating, I think you either really like this trope or you don't like it. I wasn't really sure before I read these 4 books, but I realized that after I read the 4 of them, that fake dating, when done well, sort of promises to deliver a happy ending, or at least a very satisfying ending. And I realized that I think I really like this twist in a story. There are a lot of different variants to fake dating. You can have both people in on it. You can have only one person knowing that it's fake. There can be some sort of deal attached to it. Anyway, usually what happens is for any of those reasons, 2 people are put into a situation together and then they eventually fall in love. The first book that I am going to tell you about today is called She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. So this book starts with Scotty Zajac, who at the beginning of the story has just finished a terrible basketball game in which her varsity high school basketball team has lost. Part of the reason Scotty's game was thrown off is that she was playing against her ex-girlfriend, Tally. Tally switched high school. She used to go to the same public high school that Scotty goes to, and she's now switched to this new private school, so they are rivals on the court. She's had this bad experience, then Scotty gets in her car to leave the game, and she gets into a little fender bender with none other than this cheerleader, Irene Abraham, who is Scotty's nemesis. One of the reasons that Scotty really doesn't like Irene is that there was a situation earlier in high school where Irene intentionally damaged Scotty's car as a prank. So this is something that Scotty's sort of been angry about ever since, and she didn't really understand why it happened. So that is how she feels about Irene when this fender bender happens. Both of their mothers show up, Irene's mother and Scotty's mother, and the mothers decide that, oh no, Irene doesn't have a car. How will she get to school? Perfect solution. Scotty can drive her to school. Meanwhile, Scotty and Irene are thinking, this is not the perfect solution. We don't want to be in a car together. But their moms have decided that this is the best way for them to get to school. So they start to carpool, and it's just for a few days. So one of the things that happens during the short time that they're carpooling is that because Irene is waiting at the end of the day after cheerleading practice for Scotty, she and her entire cheerleading squad go to Scotty's basketball practices and cheer them on, and go to their games and cheer them on. And the team just does incredibly well with this cheerleading squad behind them. And then when Irene is able to get another ride, the team and Scotty realize, oh no, we won't get this backing, we won't get this cheering. And then Scotty learns by eavesdropping that Irene happens to be gay as well. And Scotty has this idea that if she and Irene were dating, that would make Tally, her ex-girlfriend, really jealous, and Tally would come rushing back to her. What does Irene get out of this? Well, Irene has to pay a huge deductible for her car in order to get it fixed, and she cannot do that. She cannot afford it. Scotty has saved a lot of money and agrees to pay the deductible on Irene's insurance to get her car fixed if Irene pretends to date her. Irene comes across to Scotty as this sort of unfriendly, not very open person. And as Scotty and Irene start to spend time together, they start to learn things about each other. Irene is very much a cheerleader, going to be the prom queen, and Irene wants to get an athletic scholarship, which people mock her about because they don't think that cheerleading is a sport. And Scotty kind of holds this view too. But as she and Irene get to know each other and she realizes what Irene's real passions are and how Irene is being driven in some ways by her parents to do things she doesn't want to do and how cheerleading is what she really wants to do. And we as readers get to see Irene and warm up to her a little bit. We realize that Irene is really a strong point of this book. She was my favorite character in the book. She is just not at all what she appears to be, and she is a complex character. She's a lesbian. Not that many people know that at her school. She's Indian American and she excels at cheerleading, but she's also complex beyond that. Irene talks a lot about how the intersection between her sexuality and being Indian American have affected her and how those things lead her to act in certain ways and to conceal certain parts of herself. Irene slowly starts to reveal herself in different ways to different people. In doing this, she helps rearrange Scotty's perception of her, especially once Scotty begins to realize the real story behind the prank that began their animosity. And this shows how Irene chooses to present herself and how she carefully guards some parts of herself for some people and other parts of herself for other people. So in reading this book, I think there's a lot put into Irene that you really grow to value and admire. She really loves cheering. She is passionate about it, and she just wants to be seen as a real athlete. Another thing that I think this book handles really well is teen heartbreak and the reality of that. Scotty's heartbroken over Tally breaking up with her, and she's really grieving this loss. And the author, Kelly Quinlan, is very respectful of how true and how painful that can be. I think a lot of times teen love seems to be diminished, and in this book, we definitely see that what Scotty's going through is truly a grieving experience. This book is also a little bit of a coming out narrative, and it shows that coming out can and does happen in different ways for different people. And Quinlan shows us the depth of the experience for these different people. We see that also in another one of the books that I am going to talk about. The second book that I want to tell you about is called How Not to Ask a Boy to Prom, and this is by S.J. Gosley. I have to share the first line of this book with you because I think it is a wonderful first line. Spring renewal comes, and this is from the point of view of the main character. Spring renewal comes with many things: Sheffield family lawn game tournaments, my part-time job at the Talbot plant nursery, an inexplicable increase in dick drawings on the outside of my locker. That's how the book begins. So the book is the story of Nolan Sheffield Grant, who is a 16-year-old junior. He has been adopted by the Sheffield family after sort of a childhood in many different foster homes. We never learn any more about Nolan's childhood or his adoption. It's not really central to the story. It doesn't really matter because his family, the Sheffields, are just one of the most loving, supportive, quirky, fun families that I have read about. And his older sister, Daphne, is so protective of him. She loves him, but she also is a little bit pushy with him. She is finished with high school, and so she wants to have him experience these things that she thinks he should in high school. Nolan has never had a date. He's never kissed anyone. He is openly gay, but he does have a crush on one of the few other openly gay kids in his school named Cy. And so Daphne decides that she will create this elaborate promposal that Nolan will go through with and ask Cy to the prom. She's sort of pushing him into it. And he goes unwittingly into the situation like, okay, I'll take this banner, I'll do this thing. And he's sitting, trying to do this, and he can't get up the nerve. And so he freezes. And he is sitting next to Ira Bernstein, who's called Bern. Bern sees the banner and presumes it's for him. Although really, it turns out he's rescuing Nolan from the embarrassment of asking out Cy. And so he says, oh, you want to go to the prom with me? Okay. What Nolan knows about Bern up until this point is that Bern asked Nolan out freshman year right after Nolan came out. Nolan viewed it as a really mean joke and has not liked Bern ever since. And he thinks of him as this just mean, rude kid. But Nolan realizes if he does go to the prom with Bern, then he won't have to be pushed anymore by Daphne into a promposal, into asking Cy, into putting himself out there and embarrassing himself. Bern has just had a big breakup with his girlfriend, Gia, and he wants to show her that he has moved on. So for him, going to the prom with someone else, he feels will indicate this. And so this is how their fake dating scheme begins. Much like we found out more about the truth of Irene and Scotty's initial interaction in She Drives Me Crazy, as the story goes on, we find out more about what was really happening when Bern was asking Nolan out in Nolan's freshman year. You start to realize that maybe it's not Bern who's mean and rude. Maybe it's Nolan who's a little bit of a jerk. Even Nolan's close friends let him know this eventually. Nolan starts to see this and he tries to work and change it, and he really starts to see Bern. And as they're spending more and more time together, their fake dating starts to seem like it could be something real. Nolan's confused because it never even occurs to him that Byrne may be bi. And so Nolan's always worrying that Byrne's gonna go back to his girlfriend, and Nolan has a lot of trouble seeing what's right in front of him, which is this really, really sweet guy. Byrne is a great character. He's truly so kind, and he looks out for Nolan, and he's really sweet. There's a way that Nolan describes Byrne in the book. Byrne smells like chocolate chip cookies and bad decisions. This book is very funny. Even the fake dating part, when Nolan realizes he's entering into a fake dating scenario, he starts to research it online. He wants to make sure he gets it right. So he has all these steps and these things to do that he tells Byrne are part of the deal. Along with the humor, this book is just a good, fun rom-com. Date Me, Bryson Keller by Kevin Van Wy is a story of a 17-year-old gay, closeted boy named Kai Sheridan, who asks the very popular Bryson Keller out on a date as part of a dare, and this changes both of their lives. The first line of the book even talks about making this one decision, this kind of uh-oh decision, and doing this thing that will just turn your life upside down without you even realizing it. This book is a coming out story. It has this rom-com feel to it, but there is also fake dating in it. So Bryson Keller is the most popular kid in high school, but he has never really dated. And when he's questioned about this, he says, well, I could date a different person every week if I wanted to. I just choose not to. So a group of people come up with this Date Me, Bryson Keller dare scenario for Bryson, in which every Monday, a new person will ask Bryson to date them, and Bryson has to date this person for a week, whatever that means. The first person every week who asks him, Bryson has to say yes, no matter what. Bryson agrees, but he has his own set of rules. There won't be any hand-holding. They're only gonna do certain activities on their dates. So the girls just line up. Kai wonders what would happen if he was the one who said, date me, Bryson Keller. Kai is someone who experiences a lot of anxiety. He can't imagine even being brave enough to do this, but he somehow summons the courage to ask Bryson out. And he's the first person to ask Bryson Keller to date him that week. Bryson says yes. In asking Bryson to date him, essentially Kai has come out to Bryson, and this is the only person in his life that Kai has come out to. His parents don't know, his sister doesn't know, his two best friends don't know. And then, as part of the fake dating that they agreed to do, they spend the week together. But they also don't tell anyone that they are dating. So the school thinks Bryson hasn't followed through on the dare this week. In order to justify spending all this time together, Bryson and Kai say that they're working on a project together, which in fact they are. They have to come up with a scene to perform for their drama teacher. And in spending all this time together, working on this scene, watching Romeo and Juliet to learn to get lines, to get ideas, they start to get close to each other, and they're so thoughtful with each other. They never miscommunicate. Their relationship is just wonderful right from the start. They're very supportive of each other, and they start to realize that their feelings are growing. Bryson has never thought about being attracted to boys at all until he is attracted to Kai, and his exploration of his sexuality is really healthy in this book. He accepts that about himself, and he isn't sure that he's ready to come out to the world. He doesn't experience any questioning about his feelings for Kai. The way Bryson views this is really nicely juxtaposed with Kai's thinking about his own coming out, because for Kai, it's very scary. His family's extremely religious, and he can't imagine how they might accept him when he comes out to them, because it goes against what they believe in. Bryson is really respectful of how scary Kai's situation is and doesn't think he should do anything until he feels ready to do it. This book talks a lot about coming out versus being forced out, and what it is like when someone is actually forced out of the closet and not allowed to let people know that in their own time. There are some really good discussions around coming out, and Kai talks a lot about how, despite it being a day and age when you think it might be easier for people to come out, or that people might not be treated differently because they're queer, they still are. And there are scenarios in this book that definitely show us that. And Van Wy has done well to place them there to really start that conversation. Another thing Kai realizes is that though it is scary for him to come out, he will still be safe if he does, and he knows there are a lot of people for whom that is not the truth. This book sort of had Heartstopper vibes in the relationship between Kai and Bryson, just because they're so wonderful to each other, and there isn't any of that miscommunication that often goes along with fake dating. That's not part of this fake dating story. The last book I want to tell you about is called Love and Other Natural Disasters by Misa Seguria. If this is going to be the summer of my transformation, right here is the perfect place for it to start. I lift my face to the sky and fling my arms out, taking in the moment as completely as I can. I can feel myself transforming already. It's like magic. I feel like I can do anything, be anyone, if I just believe hard enough. Inspired, I open my eyes and scan the ocean with my new magical vision. Okay, mermaids, I know you're out there. Show yourselves. Someone clears their throat next to me, and I realize with horror that I've spoken those last words out loud. Those are the words of Nozomi Nagai, who is the main character in this book. She is headed to San Francisco at the beginning of the book. She is going to spend the summer with her uncles, Stephen and Lance, and she plans to remake herself. She's just been humiliated by a girl that she had a crush on at her school. Her parents have gone through a divorce. Her mom is now dating one of her teachers. So she just really wants to get away, and she wants to be a new person. She doesn't want to be the person that was humiliated by this girl. Nozomi is a huge fan of rom-coms, and that sort of skews her perception of the way that things can be and the way that things should happen. She thinks that the situations that she sees in movies and reads about in books are the way that things really should transpire. So the person clearing their throat in that first scene is a girl who Nozomi thinks right away is destined to be her perfect girlfriend. She's stunning in every sense of the word. Her name's Willow, and she is also heartbroken. When Nozomi and Willow have their first true encounter, Willow is just sobbing, and Nozomi offers a shoulder for Willow to cry on. Willow realizes that Nozomi's pretty easy to talk to and hang out with, and Willow asks Nozomi to pose as her new girlfriend in order to make her ex-girlfriend, Arden, jealous and hopefully win Arden back. Nozomi's happy to go along with the plan because she thinks what she can do is convince Willow that they should be together. This book takes the fake dating to a different level. It's kind of messier. There are unforeseen circumstances that come into it that change the way you think things are going to happen. And there are extra characters that are added. For instance, Willow's ex, Arden, ends up dating this girl named Della, who works in the same museum that Nozomi works in, and Nozomi can't stand her. She's really cold and abrupt, and Nozomi can't figure out why. Like the story of Irene, you start to realize why Della acts the way she does, what she's protecting about herself, and we learn this as Nozomi gets to know her better as well. There are other side stories of family. Part of what Nozomi has to go through that summer is helping her uncle and her dad convince her grandmother that she should move into a retirement home. Nozomi also wonders about coming out to her grandmother. When her uncle, Stephen, came out and got married to Lance, Nozomi's grandmother, his mother, was not supportive, was not accepting, called it a phase, still doesn't really treat Lance as a family member, doesn't invite Lance to family things, and is basically pretty homophobic. Nozomi's torn because she wants her grandmother, she's close to her grandmother, and she wants her grandmother to know all of who she is. She's out to everybody else that she knows, but not to her grandmother. But she doesn't want to alter the relationship in a bad way, partly because her grandmother is starting to experience dementia, and Nozomi worries, am I going to ruin the last time I have with her by changing the way she thinks about me? But then Nozomi worries she's not being true to herself. So that complicated situation is just one of the strained family relationships. And it also creates some of the difficult decisions that are in this book. The book also deals with grief and loss, that people have experienced loss of different things, loss of actual people, loss of potentially yourself as you grow older, of what you might lose when you have to give up your house and all your possessions, loss of a marriage. So it's very multi-leveled in that way. And as far as the fake dating scenario goes, it does not follow the predictable path that you think it's going to. There is fake dating, between Willow and Nozomi. But does that necessarily mean that that relationship is going to end in a true relationship? I'll let you read the book to find that out. I'm not going to spoil that. What this book really addresses is the idea of making yourself into something you're not in order to impress somebody, or in order to be in a relationship with somebody, or in order to convince yourself that you are that person, and sometimes to manipulate the situation. Love and Other Natural Disasters shows you how manipulative some of the actors in a fake dating situation can be and have to be. Nozomi is a character who is sort of clueless about the way she's treating other people, and that comes out to play for her in a very interesting way. And something that I think comes up in all four of these books, and in fake dating books in general, is that though you may think you know the outcome, or though the outcome may be obvious right from the beginning that these people who are pretending to be together will end up together, you don't always know the steps of how they're going to get there. And that's what makes the stories really fun to read and really good to read. And I would recommend any one of the four of these books that all feature fake dating. Thanks for joining me.